Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. The whole panel has arrived, and joining us at this time, we have an additional 73 viewers. To the viewers, welcome as well. We'll go ahead and get started. Please, just a reminder to keep yourself muted when you're not speaking to help with any feedback loops. So thank you all again for joining us today. Both Mayor Dilkens and Chief Mizuno would like to say a few words momentarily. Following this, Christopher Menard, the Cultural Development Coordinator and Mayor's Office team member with the City of Windsor, will take over as moderator for today's discussion, which will include remarks from each of our panelists. A reminder that participants must turn your own microphone and camera on and off using the Zoom buttons in the bottom left corner of your screen. Panelists, please ensure that your camera is enabled for the entire session, but only turn your microphone on when speaking. Please note, as mentioned, we are also joined by members of the public who are observing this video discussion as attendees, but not as panelists. The attendees will be able to enter questions or comments into the chat function within Zoom. This chat field will be open to everyone, and we may be able to post some of the questions or highlight some of the comments as time permits. Thank you again for your attendance and participation today, panelists, and thank you for your willingness to use this technology. I'll turn things over now to Mayor Dilkens to start us off. Go ahead, Mayor.
Well, thank you very much, Dana, and good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to begin today's call by sharing a quote that I found recently, and it's uncredited rather, but it goes, "Talk with people who make you see the world differently." And these certainly are words that are compelling to me in the context of today's conversation and in the context of today's world. And I wanted to provide a platform and invite you here today as Black and African leaders in our community. Joining us today, we have Patricia Brown, who's a barrister and solicitor. Irene Moore-Davis is the manager of continuing education at St. Clair College, as well as a noted author and historian. Michael Brown is with us, the operations officer from the Rafa Christian Center. Joy Hurst Morrison, many of you know, she's with the Coalition for Justice, Unity, and Equity. John Elliott is here of the Sandwich Teen Action Group and a former Ward 2 city councillor. Claude Seizanu is here. He's the president of the African Community Organization of Windsor. I'm delighted to be joined today with Moya McAllister, who, besides being an arts winner in our recent arts awards, is also a national self-represented litigants, a member of the National Self-Represented Litigants Project. And of course, you see on this call today, Windsor Police Chief Pam Mizuno, Councillor Fred Francis, who's representing the Multicultural Council of Windsor and Essex County, where he serves as Director of Programs and Development, and Constable Neil Mckechrin from the Diversity and Recruitment Office with the Windsor Police Service. And I want to thank you all for being here on this call today. It means a lot to me, and it means a lot to everyone who's watching. You know, your years of experience and expertise, your groups and associations, the connections, and importantly, your lived experiences have the ability to shape an open and honest conversation. And I would like to take a moment as we begin to say a few things. I know many of you, many people across our community, many people around the world are angry. They're feeling lost and alone and helpless in response to the tragic and violent killing of George Floyd. And when I watched that, I was floored to watch that actually happen. And all of those recent events that are happening in the United States. And for many, confidence and trust in leaders at all levels and those sworn to protect and uphold your safety and in your very own city, province, and country is shaken. And we are all part of a country where anti-Black racism and bias exist, despite our efforts and the efforts of so many to eradicate it. Now, I cannot begin to fully understand your emotions at this time or the daily toll that this takes on your hearts and souls, but I see you, I hear you, and I stand with you. And I want to underscore and emphasize that racism has no place in our society. We are hearing this message across the world right now, and you heard recently from Chief Mizuno, who spoke about accountability as one of the core values of the Windsor Police Service, reaffirming a commitment to serve the community objectively, passionately, and with integrity. You heard from our Prime Minister, who said that racism still exists in our country and that we need to be better in Canada. I certainly echo what they've said, and I add my own voice to that. And there is no doubt Windsor means the world to me. From my first run at City Council through my most recent campaign to continue as mayor, I asked to lead this community because I believe in it, and I am very, very proud of it. And I'm proud that we live in one of the most diverse communities in all of Canada. I am proud that we are known for a spirit of giving and compassion, a spirit of understanding. I am proud that we step up to help one another rather than stepping over people. And I'm proud that we are continually evolving, becoming stronger, more diverse, more welcoming, always working to leave the world a bit better than we found it. and I know that we still have a long way to go together. I recently attended the Black Lives Matter Balloon Memorial at the waterfront, and as I stood there alongside residents from diverse backgrounds with a broad array of life experiences and histories, I was struck how Windsor, our community, comes together to celebrate our similarities and our differences time after time. I was also struck that we do this at some of the bleakest moments in the world, whether it's the vigil for Orlando, the shooting at the Quebec Mosque, and the tragedy of the Congregation of the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. Those are all two recent examples. And these are the times, like now, as we feel the loss of George Floyd and all that it represents, that again, we come together. We stand side by side in solidarity and strength to be visible to one another, not to be controlled by fear, and not to find some hope in the good that exists in the community. We want to find that hope. We want the good that exists to shine through. And there is so much good in our community, and all of you are evidence of that. So today I'm hoping, and this whole call today is about talking about some of the good, some of what we as a community are getting right. And I'm hoping that we can talk about where we have room as a community to evolve and to grow, and to work to ensure that we are all safe, we are all represented, we are all seen, we are all heard, we are all included, and we are all valued. Now, please know that I stand with Windsor's diverse community, with our people of color, with our friends, our families, and our neighbors. You are not alone. Each and every one of you matters. And let me say, Black Lives Matter. You are a vital part of our community, and Windsor stands with you always. So thank you for accepting the invitation. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for sharing the stories you're going to share, some of the struggles along with your hopes. And all of us on the call today, and all of those who are observing, have a different perspective. And we're here to talk with people who can make us see the world differently. And certainly that feels like the right place to start. So as we get started, thanks again for being here. I'll turn the floor over to Chief Mizuno for a few remarks. Chief?
Thank you, Mayor. I first just wanted to say that I really appreciate this opportunity to join everyone to have this important conversation. Working in the spirit of cooperation, we have come together for a productive and meaningful discussion. And it really underscores my belief that together we do have the ability to engage in meaningful dialogue, regardless of how contentious the issues may be. And as the mayor had stated, like many of you, we at the Windsor Police Service are angered by the recent events that have tested the public's confidence in the policing partners. And the job of policing can present many challenges. However, we are never permitted to deviate from conducting ourselves professionally and ethically at all times, whether somebody's watching or not, whether there's oversight or not. We're bound by that. Our job is to keep our public safe and our community safe. And accountability continues to be the marker for tangible and substantive change, and is one of the core values of the Windsor Police Service. So we at the Windsor Police Service are committed to the people we work for and with, and we must acknowledge that anti-Black racism and bias exists in Canada. But that doesn't mean that it can't be addressed and eradicated. The Windsor Police Service is committed to engaging in dialogue, and that's the reason we're here today, and the reason that we established that we have a diversity and recruitment coordinator and a newly established equity, diversity, and inclusivity coordinator for the police service. And we want to engage in dialogue about how we can ensure the respectful and unbiased treatment of all. And for me, today is about listening. Listening to the community, listening to the leaders that are joining us, and hearing their experiences and thoughts on how we can move forward towards change that will make Windsor a stronger and more inclusive place to live. So once again, I thank you everyone for being here today, and I'm hoping we're going to have a really good discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief. I'll turn the floor to our moderator now, Christopher Menard. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. What I would like to do is introduce each one of you with a little bit more background on who you are. Then I will turn the floor over to you so you can tell us what you're working on, what's important to you, what you're observing, what you want to share with us. You'll have the floor for about 2 minutes each, and then we will move on to the next speaker. Okay. I would like to start off with Pastor Michael Brown, who steers RAFA's Youth Outreach Services Program, a provincially funded initiative under the Network of Services for Black Children, Youth, and Families. The program is oriented to empower youth and their families to act on their own behalf and build community connections. Pastor, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to the mayor, to chief, and to all of those who have put together this wonderful opportunity on a very important day, it being Juneteenth. To our fellow friends across the border, we do thank you for putting this together during this very uncomfortable and uncertain time for people of color, Black people, during all what has been going on across the border. And what it has done is bring to light a lot of feelings that we have had or continue to have as Black Canadians, even Black residents living in Windsor, Ontario. But before we get into all of that, I am not the pastor of Rockford Christian Center. That is my daddy. And so I'm not going to steal his job just yet. But I am the operations manager there. And we work with Black youth. We have a specific grant towards that. Our main objective in a roundabout way is just getting our Black children in Windsor, Ontario, access to all the other programs and things that are available to them that they would not necessarily know about, given where they live and whatever else like that. So that's what we do. I also want to tout the BACC of Windsor Children's Aid Society. There's a few of you on here that are also board members with me for that. And our job there at BACC is to, we're trying to bridge the gap between our Black families and the Children's Aid Society. One of the key things that we're trying to do is to encourage Black families to be foster parents and to participate in kinship. So that didn't make my bio, but that's something that's near and dear to my heart that we do in the city. Joy sits on that committee with me. Cloud sits on that committee with me. Officer Neil sits on that committee with me. And so that is very important that we're doing. We've made great strides in our community in bridging the gap between Black families and the Children's Aid Society of Windsor, Essex. So that's a little bit of what I do in town. I'm not as busy as a lot of these folks around here, but we do our best to make things better, make things more comfortable. I arrived in Windsor in 1994 with my parents. From the great, beautiful city of Toronto. And it was the first time I realized that I was Black, is when I arrived here. The treatment that I received as a 10-year-old child, or 9-year-old child at the time. And so it's really shaped who I am, but Windsor remains a beautiful place. The fact that we're able to sit here with the mayor and the chief of police and all the other wonderful people speaks to the heart of our city. And so we look forward to productive conversation, but more importantly, action. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. Next up, we'll hear from Cloud. He is an active member of the African, Black, and Caribbean diaspora in Windsor since 2010. He currently serves as president of the African Community Organization of Windsor, a nonprofit committed to promoting the unity and solidarity of Africans in Windsor, Essex. He and the organization are dedicated to assisting immigrants and refugees as they integrate into Windsor and access services, along with charitable outreach and programming for youth. Welcome. Cloud, you're muted.
Yeah, I just realized it. So thank you, and thank you, Mayor Drew Dilkens, for putting together this panel, specifically what is Diana. Great job. It's something that is needed for a long time. And Michael mentioned, we work together on the BACC committee, trying to assist the Black families and any other families, they involved with CAS, which is a good thing. And we have this program according to our protocol with CAS at the African community, where we are the front line for any family that is getting into, I don't want to say in trouble, but involved with CAS, and we advocates. And so far it's been 2 years, and I think we're doing good. Everybody in the community is appreciating. We work with Caribbeans and African, and you name it. Just helping people in the integration in the community, Canadian way of living. Because when you come from a different place from Canada, the culture is different, and you learn how to live again. Like Michael said, myself, I really got involved into all these community activities because you can hear from my accent that I'm not from here. So I got the right treatment the first time at the border going to work, and you can imagine moving from US to Canada, thinking that over here, because I speak French and English, it would be better. But it was here that I got my good treatment at, the first time. I really appreciate what we're doing with Constable Neil and other members of the police department of Windsor. Windsor actually has the best policing system in Canada. It's just my opinion, because we have a diversity department, okay, which other cities don't have. So it's already one step forward in what we're trying to do, right? And that's all I can say for now. And maybe later on, I'll let you know how I feel about racism and all this stuff that we experience in the city, and how we can work together to make it happen. But I also believe that if we have to have this panel next time, we should extend it to other members of the community, because not only Black people experience racism, right? So thank you for now.
Thank you so much, Cloud. Next up, welcome to Joy Hurst Morrison, who is an advocate and community organizer serving as CEO of the Coalition for Justice, Unity, and Equity. The coalition strives to promote equality, respect, and understanding amongst all members of the community by advocating for racialized peoples, particularly of African descent. Thanks for being here, Joy. Joy, you're muted too.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Welcome, everybody else. Also, I'm so happy to be here, and it's a privilege to be a part of this panel. It's very important to many of us. And I first want to start off by thanking the city, the mayor, the Windsor Police Services, and just everybody involved here. It's been amazing over the last couple of weeks of all the work that everybody's tried to put in. Well, right now for the coalition, we have a pretty large group of youth that we support online, and we do that with activities, care packages, and we help with their mental stress right now through all the different things that are happening in the community. And our immediate mandate is our youth, our community, in addressing systemic racism. I mean, it's here, we all know it's here, we're all addressing it, and I think that's a beginning for everybody, for the community especially. Our walk for justice received so many calls from the mayor's office, the Windsor Police Services, asking what can they do to assist. That is a step towards change that is needed. Today's panel is also a step towards change that is needed. So I'm just happy to be here, and I have a lot to say. I have a lot of points that were given to me by the community, and I'll try to get the points across as we're able to. But right now, I'll just let it pass through everybody else as far as the introductions, and then I can speak a little further later. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Joy. Next up, I'd like to introduce Irene Moore-Davis, an educator, historian, author, and activist who frequently speaks about equity, diversity, and African Canadian history to a wide variety of audiences. Irene's forthcoming book is titled Our Own Two Hands, A History of Black Lives in Windsor from the 1700s Forward. In her professional life, Irene is an administrator at St. Clair College, where she also teaches Underground Railroad history. Welcome, Irene.
Thank you for having me, and thank you to everyone who convened this panel. This is a really significant moment in our history, and I feel that this is a great opportunity to address some of the unresolved issues that we have faced here in Canada with respect to racism and systemic discrimination. So I'm so glad that this conversation is happening. I'm here really representing the Essex County Black Historical Research Society. Our mandate involves not only conducting research into African Canadian history, but making sure that people are aware of it, building that awareness, going out into schools and organizations and doing presentations and sharing as much information as we can. African Canadian history is Canadian history. And we really feel that focusing on the accomplishments and contributions of persons of African descent in this region from the 1700s to the present helps to deal with some of those pervasive stereotypes that still persist and that continue to keep people of African descent down in a variety of systems, including the criminal justice system, the education system, and others. So looking forward to the rest of the discussion when we can get to tackling some of the issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene. John Elliott is with us. John served as City Windsor Ward 2 Councillor and is now Executive Director of Sandwich Teen Action Group, or STAG, a community-based nonprofit organization responding to the needs of youth in Windsor, Essex County. STAG is committed to providing programs for positive life experiences that enable youth at risk to find support, cope with problems, and lead healthy lives. Thanks for being here, John. John, you'll just need to unmute. Dana, John's camera seems like it might be frozen, so.
Yeah, we have been experiencing some technical difficulties. I'll see
Okay.
if I can get him on the line here, and we'll reconnect.
Perfect. I'm going to move on to welcome Patricia Brown. Patricia Brown is
there
a.
I go. There I go. Am I back?
Go, John.
I certainly would like to be able to have these meetings in person, because the only Zoom meetings that I've experienced so far is with church, right? So I'm still a little bit new at this thing, but anyways, welcome. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I mean, it's a good day for a great discussion. I got a call from Councillor Neil Mckechrin in regards to this, and I said, you know, Neil, I have to be involved, because I know there's information that I have that I like to share, you know, with the different groups and the different panel members. I think one of the right off the top of my head, one of the biggest things that I'm most proud of, and Chris, by the way, I've been at STAG for I'm in my 29th year, so I'm not just now here, right? Right? I seen that in the bio. I'm like, I'm almost to the end of my tenure, but I will sit on the board at STAG. But anyways, over that 29 years, for the ones that don't know, STAG was founded by 2 police officers, and I know that's sort of the backdrop in terms of why we're here today, of, you know, what's going on over in the U.S. With what we've been watching. Being able to work with 2 police officers that founded the Sandwich Teen Action Group back in 1991. I actually came in 93, and the relationship that we have built over, well, almost 30 years now, in terms of the community, you know, working with the police. I'm familiar with Chief Mizuno. We worked back together in the city many moons ago. So, you know, that relationship and being able to build that bridge, I think that's where, you know, certain things I'd like to be helpful towards. You know, I know there's a lot of feelings out there, so I'll probably be more of a listener in terms of, you know, how people are feeling. But, you know, I think the relationship there with the police and, you know, now this much time later, the fruits of that relationship is now we're actually seeing some of our kids that came right from the center now getting on with the police. So it's been a culmination of, you know, it's like 29 years of work, but I guess I kind of want to throw it to the panel, you know, building those relationships in the community with different partners. You know, we have a lot of partners around the table, and the police being one of the partners. There is light at the end of the tunnel, you know, I know I listened to Claude and he's a couple years in, but, you know, it's some encouragement that way to say, listen, if your group is seriously wanting to do the work to build those relationships and partnerships in this community, they're there. It takes a long time. It's a lot of work. There's a lot of things in between, but the end result is there are fruits of the labor. So, you know, I'm thankful to be here. Thank you for having me here, and I'm certainly want to listen and hear what the feeling is in and around the community of what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. We'll go to Patricia Brown, a Windsor criminal defense lawyer with areas of practice including criminal defense, mental health, and immigration law. Welcome, Patricia.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me. I can just say that I wanted to thank the City of Windsor and specifically Mayor Drew Dilkens for putting this panel together. I think it's really important for us to have these particular discussions. I think it's overdue, and it's unfortunate that we have to come together in these types of circumstances. Hopefully through these discussions, we'll learn from each other and we'll have an opportunity to raise concerns that we've identified in our particular community, and with also some solution focused conversation as to how we can move forward and how we can heal as a community. One of the things that I feel is very important is that we all want to come to the table. I do agree with some of the other panelists that there are some stakeholders that are not at the table through education, and it would be good to hear directly from CAS, and I'm really glad Michael Brown is here to talk about our children and how our children, our Black children, are being adversely affected by systemic racism and anti-Black racism in our country. I want to thank the mayor and the chief of police for acknowledging systemic racism. That's a huge step. This is the first step towards moving forward in the positive light. It's not just instances of George Floyd. It's the everyday interactions that well, I could say my clients, sorry, that individuals have in the community. With our police officers, law enforcement, or even going to a government office where they feel that they experience microaggressions or discriminations on particular levels. So hopefully we can evaluate on and talk a little bit more about that. The component I have to add here is I'm just on the front lines, right? I work in the criminal justice system. I advocate for my clients of all races, all backgrounds. I work with clients who are First Nations, who have felt discriminated against and have felt harassed by the police. Not just in this jurisdiction, I also represent clients in Chatham, Kent, Sarnia, Ontario, and London, Ontario, and their stories are almost similar. And so hopefully we'll come together and discuss and raise particular issues. I know we can only deal with the issues here in Windsor, but I just want everyone to be alive to those issues. I want to thank you guys for inviting me here today, and hopefully I'll have something great or positive to add. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Moya McAllister recently accepted a Mayor's Arts Award on behalf of ACT Arts Collective Theatre, which is an organization that consistently stages shows that focus on the lives of people of color and marginalized populations. She is currently speaking to local organizations and groups about racism and how to use the arts to educate and bring awareness to social justice issues in the hopes of affecting positive changes in our society. She is a member of the newly formed Black Women for Forward Action and is with the National Self-Represented Litigants Project. Welcome, Moya.
Hi, thank you so much for allowing me to speak on this panel and being with all of you. I kind of just want to echo what a lot of our panelists have already said in regards to how important this conversation is. The fact that we are together having this discussion is just, it's a great first step to how we can create some great positive changes. What we do at the NSRLP, well, one of the things that we do at the SRLP is we bring policymakers, legal professionals, educators, and access to justice advocates to a table with self-reps to talk about how they're being treated in the court system. And it's a way to empathize with them, to understand what they're going through. And I think these discussions are so important because that's what we need right now. I don't know how many times I've had people call me up and say, you know, I didn't realize that I was doing this or that, or you were feeling this way, or my Black friends are feeling this way. And I think there is this, I think these conversations creates that kind of empathy that we need to really understand some of the systemic racism that is being experienced in our country. I think with Arts Collective Theater, what we are really trying to do is with our social justice theater projects, it's centered around storytelling. And I think storytelling is a great way to bring awareness to issues and to deliver it in a different creative form that can really sink in with people. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to take really important matters and put them on stage in a way to educate, bring awareness to, and hopefully create some positive changes. So yeah, thank you so much. I do have much more to say, but I'll let everybody else continue chatting. But yes, thank you for allowing me to be here today.
Thank you, Moya. Up next, Councillor Fred Francis, who is also the Director of Programs and Development with the Multicultural Council of Windsor and Essex County. He has worked in both the for-profit and non-profit sectors prior to being elected to Windsor City Council in 2014. He currently serves as the Director of Programs and Development over at MCC, a newcomer settlement organization with the mission of working to create a welcoming community free of racism and discrimination. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Christopher. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Chief Mizuno, and thank you for everyone for joining us today. It's certainly a pleasure to be here on behalf of everyone who works and volunteers at the Multicultural Council. We work every day to combat racism and discrimination. We know Black Lives Matter. We know there's systemic racism. We know there's implicit bias found within Windsor, Essex, Ontario, Canada. So we work every day to help to combat that and create a welcoming community. So I'll keep my comments brief because I certainly want to listen to most of you than to listen to myself. So on behalf of the MCC and everyone that works and volunteers here, I just want to let everyone know we're here, we're willing to do the work, and whatever resources we could bring to the fight against racism and discrimination, you can count on us.
Thank you so much. Finally, Constable Neil Mckechrin, it was mentioned you're the Diversity and Recruitment Officer with Windsor Police Services. Welcome.
Thanks a lot, and good afternoon to everyone. My role really is more community outreach, and my job itself was created from a human rights project, which was led by our Chief, Pam Mizuno, and I think it was back in 2012. And back then, we reached out to our community members and asked them about our policing, and quite a few positive responses, but also some negative ones. And I think from that, we sort of knew that we had to do some work. And my role was created, and part of what I had to do was sort of go into the community and see what's going on, kind of listen to our community members, right? And try to sort of have some dialogues and discussions. And we've been doing that, and it's becoming a lot more positive. The other part of my role is as a recruitment officer. And another thing, we kept on saying we welcome anyone to join the Windsor Police, but it wasn't happening. So again, we had to kind of go out there and see why it wasn't happening and start to make those changes and make it start to happen. Slowly, it's beginning to happen. We're getting a lot more diverse candidates. We're going to keep on getting better. But in our role, we will keep on pushing harder to make Windsor a diverse place, a diverse police department, and we'll keep on pushing to make ourselves better. We know we aren't perfect. We know things happen, but we'll keep on pushing hard. And that's part of what my role is, and all of us as Windsor Police members, to keep on pushing hard so our police service could represent what policing is supposed to be. And that's my dream personally. I want to see this police service be one that everyone can look at and say, what are they doing in Windsor? Why is it working so well in Windsor? That's what we have to do. That's what we're pushing very hard to get done.
Thank you very much, Constable. That's everyone. We've introduced each of you. Thank you so much for telling us a little bit about who you are and what brings you here today. One thing that came up through several people's comments was this, the concept of systemic and systematic racism. And I was wondering if maybe we could start out with a discussion of the difference between the two and what we're really talking about. Is there anyone who would like to or is willing to answer the question? Go ahead, Councillor Francis.
Thank you. Perhaps I'll start and provide some kind of imperfect explanation on the way I see it, and then others can provide their perspective. But when you think of systematic racism, you have to understand the system, and going back, hundreds of years, was not built in a representative way. So when you're going back hundreds and hundreds of years, and the system and the institutions were built in a way that weren't completely reflective of everyone, of all cultures, of all races, then there is, implicit bias that exists over the years. It could get better, and obviously where we are now is better than we were 50 or 100 years ago, but we still got a long way to go. But there is implicit bias that is found within institutions, and that, in my opinion, in my definition, is how I would explain systematic racism or systemic racism. And it's difficult to see that. It's difficult to acknowledge that at times. But at the Multicultural Council, what we do with our training and our anti-racism training is try to help institutions and individuals understand that there might be barriers to participation, and we try to help them create a strategic process to identify those barriers to participation and eliminate them. It's not always easily done, and you have to ask difficult questions, and you have to change your thought processes at times, but that's what we try to do.
Thank you. Would anybody like to respond?
I'd be happy to. I mean, I think we have to look at systemic racism as something that all of us have absorbed merely by existing in this North American culture. There are just pervasive stereotypes that continue to be around, that many of us have not really given a lot of thought to, but they've been part of our lives for so long that even when we don't perceive ourselves as racist, we can act and think in racist ways. In terms of people of African descent, specifically people from across the African diaspora, what we encounter in terms of systemic racism is pervasive throughout the criminal justice system, the education system, the finance and economic system, and many other systems. And specifically with respect to law enforcement, we're coming up against things that have been said about us and believed about us for so many hundreds of years, based simply on the systems that needed to be kept in place to make slavery normalized and to keep a certain group of people down economically. Those ideas that people of African descent are inherently inferior or less intelligent or more dangerous or more likely to commit crimes results in us being overly policed, treated differently, even when people don't mean to treat us differently in a conscious kind of way. And those are the kinds of things we have to work against. So it takes daily work to examine ourselves and make sure that we are not acting in those racist ways. And we're all looking forward to working together to make sure that we get better at this.
Thank you very much. I'll open the floor again if anybody wanted to weigh in.
Yeah, I think I'll, can you hear me? Okay, so from STAG perspective, I'll try to use both perspectives, share a little bit about my time as a city councilor also, but we've sort of grown like at STAG, we do what we want to do kind of thing. So, I mean, I work with the young people, 13 to 19 years old, and to me, it's always been real diverse. And anything to do with racism or something, it always stopped right at the door, because as soon as you come in the center, there's me. So you could basically get the idea of what's going to go on here. But the kids, what I've always seen, I've always hung around and been friends, right? Versus anything real racist or anything along those lines. I'd never seen it at the center. And frankly, if I had or witnessed it or anything, that would get dealt with quick. As a city councilor, I don't want to laugh, but I think actually my first, and you got to understand me, I'm born and raised in Windsor all my life. 12 generations of my family are here. And so as a councilor, and I've talked about this now that I'm not on council a little bit more, I sort of grounded a little bit better, but I was telling a friend and sharing some of my experience or something. I said, you know what, being in council, I said it was the first time I had my nose rubbed in prejudice in a very long time. And I mean, I share that. It wasn't by my colleagues on council. It wasn't by the people that worked at the city within there, because treated just like anybody else, never had an issue of anything. It was more of the community outside that came to one of the meetings. And the mayor and Councilor Francis probably would remember it. But I remember one lady coming in the chambers and it was an issue going on. And for some reason, I didn't know who she was, but she thought she would, direct her whatever at me. And it was that Councilor Elliott should be ashamed of himself because his community is a more the most poor disadvantaged, right? And I just remember sitting there looking at her. The second time she said it, oh yeah, smoke was coming out of my ears. You could believe that. I mean, somebody born and raised in Windsor, you know, I didn't get a lot of it, but I mean, being born and raised here, yes. I know where it's at in schools and that sort of thing. I can reflect back to a lot of experience. But that to me, because I'm older, mature, I'm a father, the whole thing with me is respectful. Because if I'm disrespectful, then my mom's going to be after me. So my encounter with that in council that time was one that, you know, and I remember talking to the mayor afterwards, and we had a brief discussion. And I said to him, I said, because he didn't know who I was a new counselor. We didn't know each other personally. And, you know, I reassured him, I'm not like any of that, you know, because I had some statements that at the end where you give your statement, I said a couple things to her, but I tried to keep them in context and respectable. But I did say to him, I said, for a moment, I forgot that there were people still out there like that. And I'm 60 years old. So to experience that at that time was, you know, it was like, hey, take the blinders off, John. So, you know, and what we're talking about now is like many, many years. And some of the younger panelists probably can enlighten me of some things too, because, you know, I'll admit, as I've gotten older, a lot of things I've probably just covered up. That rather than deal with it, probably cover it up. But as now you start to peel back the layers of growing up in a city like Windsor all your life, and went to school here, got educated here, worked here. I stayed home. You know, I didn't leave the city. I've never left the city. But, you know, I think some of the conversations that we'll have around the table today will be able to, you know, peel back some of that and kind of, you know, I could probably understand where some of the panelists are coming from too, because this is new to me. Like this conversation a lot of it will be, oh yeah, I remember something similar to that. But then some of it may be, really, I didn't know that, right? So, you know, to the younger panelists, and I don't mean that by anything bad, but, you know, as you're sharing some of your experiences, you know, I'm certainly gonna be all ears. So I don't know if that helps, but it's my rant anyways.
Anyone like to respond?
Yes, I'd like to add something. Joy Hurst, the question you had asked about the difference. Systemic is like throughout an entire system, like the police, education, and so forth, where systematic is intentional. It's planned and methodical. Like those are the two differences between the two. And from my perspective, the truth is that our history of inequality runs so deep that trust between racial groups are almost non-existent. We cannot expect people to trust a system that plays favorites with race, that spreads hate, avoids addressing the hard topics because they raised a society to shun people that are different or broken. So this is going to be our task, and it's going to be a lot of work for us to get through this, but we have to address those issues specifically before we can gain trust of the people in our community. Thank you.
I just want to add something really quickly, if that's okay.
Yes.
Thank you. I agree with what has been said so far, but I just want to, from my perspective, when you look at systemic racism, you're looking at barriers that are there where there's a lack of access to justice, access to resources, access to finances. Like if you look at it, let's just look at it in a layman's term without using big language. Somebody goes in to apply for a loan and the person standing behind the desk will deny them that application just because of how they look. Somebody goes in to apply for a job. And in Canada, what we do is we take that resume with a smile. And when they step out the door, you chuck it in the bin. This is the problem with systemic racism, is because you're dealing with individuals who are systemically in power and in place, and they have positions where they can make a difference in someone's life, but they don't add or provide opportunities. So the lack of access to resources, the creation of barriers systemically has created an environment, as Ms. Hurst said, and as the other speakers have said, that creates an atmosphere of distrust. When one lacks access to the same services, resources, and justice that everybody else can attain, there is a loss for trust. There's a lack of trust. And there is certainly a perception that, why should I continue to be a part of this? How do I feel like I'm a part of this community? Why should I participate in this community when I'm not respected for who I am? And that is the problem. And so when I think about systemic racism, I think about access to justice and the lack of it, where one individual will be walking down the street minding his own business, and then the police will approach him. Why are you approaching him? Because he looks like he doesn't belong. So why does he look like he doesn't belong? He's a Black kid walking down the street minding his own business. That's why he doesn't belong. If the kid was a white kid walking down the street, would he be stopped in the same manner? And this is where I think when it comes to the issues with surrounding, in Toronto, they call it carding, but here we don't call it carding. It's a different type of process where individuals are placed in a system where the police approach them and contact them and add their name to a particular data bank. These types of practices are issues that create a distrust in the community. And what we believe, what I believe anyway, is that it attributes to implicit bias, racial profiling, and possibly even systemic racism. Thank you.
I'll add to what Patricia just said. It's not just youth. I've recently moved into one of Windsor's very historic neighborhoods, and haven't even been there for a year yet. I had some friends visiting with us. We took them on a drive a few blocks away from our home. Within minutes, flashing lights behind me. This is a very true story that happened just months ago, pre-corona. Flashing lights behind me, an officer approaches the car, a Black officer approaches the vehicle and says that he received a call of 2 suspicious Black men in my neighborhood, where I live, where I pay taxes. 2 suspicious Black men driving around. It's things like that that keep happening. Or at my previous address, getting out of my car, coming from the gym in sweats, again, my house that I pay taxes on, with a hood on, flashing lights behind me. What are you doing? How do I know that you live here? Can I see your driver's license? Does that happen to everyone else? I don't know. But these things, we've learned to just live with them and to adapt to them, and it's not fair and it's not right. And what you're seeing now, this bubbling over, people are just tired of having to conform to this societal norm that we're told to live. When I go into like a high-end store like a Neiman Marcus or a Macy's or the Bay or something, we do this thing where you show your hands when you're walking out to make sure people know that you don't have anything, because security is watching you. I'm sure most of you can attest to that. It's things like that, systems that are put in place that are unspoken, but everyone knows, and people are tired. They're tired, and that's where you're seeing a lot of this bubbling over, a lot of this anger, and folks are wondering, well, where did it come from? What is all this? Where did this come from? Well, we've been forced to live a certain way. We have the same degrees, we drive the same cars, we live in the same neighborhoods, but still we're treated less than.
Can I add something to that as well? You're so right. We're tired, but there's also this fear about speaking up about it as well. I had an experience last year at the casino where I walked in with a friend, same age, only a couple years apart, a friend who was white, and who was he was just said, the security guard said, you can go right on in. And the security guard held onto my passport and was just staring at it and staring at it. And I said, I'm like, do you have any questions for me? Like, let me know. And he was just like, he asked me again, my age and everything like that. And my friend who's with me, like, this went on for about 15, 20 minutes, just staring at it and like kept swiping it. I'm like, what is wrong? Like, he wasn't saying anything to me. And my friend was getting angry. Like, he was really getting angry about it, but I had to be calm. I had to make sure that I wasn't going to blow it out of proportion, because I was afraid that if I did something wrong, something would happen from that. So I had to keep quiet, and I had to let that experience happen. And, people walked by, and they just kept going by and going past, and they were getting more upset, and they were allowed to be upset about it, but I was not. And I think that fear is in a lot of us, because we're so, we don't know what's going to happen if we speak up and if we say something.
Another quick point on the systemic part, that's quite a true example as well, Moya. The education system at schools, undoubtedly, our kids, I was the first cohort of when we switched to the new applied and academic. That was back in 1999. I remember that like it was yesterday. And I noticed that all of my friends were encouraged to take the academic classes, but I was told, take the applied classes. Why? I had good grades just like everyone else. I was a valedictorian of my class. Why was I being told to take applied classes? Things like that. The reporting of our children to the Children's Aid Society by the teachers is completely unfair. And Patricia can speak to that, I'm sure, as well. Grossly over-reported. Or what happens for, not to diminish a concern that a teacher may have with regards to a child's safety or their well-being, but the level of which Black children are reported to the Children's Aid versus non-Black children is quite alarming, right here in our city of Windsor, Ontario. So that's another form of systemic racism that we see right here in our little town. We're reported way, way, way more. And the way in which they've gone around in fudging the numbers is mixed children are not necessarily reported as Black children. So that's why the numbers are a little bit off. That's a conversation that gets into a whole bunch of technicalities, but we see that very much. Joy can speak to that. It's unfair, and it continues to happen.
So if I might say, I agree with everything that you guys said, man, and this make me laugh. You can't just know how much I feel better right now that we have this platform and talking about it. When I decided to move from Mount Clemens, US to Canada, is because I thought that Canada was, a better place than US. And after I moved here with my family, I realized that actually there's a better chance in US when it comes to racism. But Canada, make no mistake, has racism, but the most dangerous racism. You know why? Because you say McAllister and Michael said it's silent. We live in fear and nobody say anything. And when you guys are lucky, you're born here and your English is so clear, you sound, excuse me, like a white person when you speak in English. But when I'm speaking English, you can understand me, but I still have my accent. Just that. It's a big thing. Now, when my son goes out, when he open that door, leaving this house, until he gets back home, I'm scared for his life. Okay, and look at the system, the education system. What happened to me personally with my son? Because this little one doesn't talk too much. He's pretty quiet. He's almost 20 now and still the same. The system wanted to put him in a special program because he doesn't speak and because his last name is not from here and he's Black. I mean, should we have to go through that? And you look at so many things that graduating from high school, he has better mark than everybody, just like Michael said. But they wanted to push him into a program that he doesn't want to go to and force him to go to a college. Fortunately, he got the program that he wanted to be in with college. And guess what? He's going to graduate hands-on. Otherwise, they would never allow him to go to the university. And nobody said anything. You know, people in my community, that some of them don't even speak English, they speak French. I'm talking about people with PhD and all those stuff. They come here based on their experience and they end up taxi driver till retirement. I applied for some jobs in here in this country and I got called. Your resume look good, but you overqualified. What are you talking about? I know this. Why can't I get the job? Why the system always put the black young guy, push him to drop out? And then when it happened, what's next? I mean, he has no much choice. You know, he's gonna end up, you know, in the factory for how long? And then he will look to try to do something, you know, make his life better. He end up behind bars. Like the black men don't have no value. You know, it's so many issues, you know, with this silent, dangerous racism in Canada. I don't understand. And it's, you know, I get frustrated every time that I experience it. Myself getting pulled over on Arlette Avenue by a light-skinned police officer telling me that I was driving 120 on a 60. Come on. Is that possible? Because I was driving a brand new car and I'm a black man. And I shouldn't. And what I heard is, oh, it's profiling, because usually black people, they rent a brand new car and put a child in the back seat when they're running their drug business. I'm like, really? Is that what we boiled down to? You know, we got involved helping families in the African community when they get involved with CAS. You know, people at CAS, they're doing their job. But the education system is forcing some teachers to do something that they're not supposed to. You know, excuse my term, but the white boy come to school this morning, now wash his face, it's okay. But when it's the black boy, guess what? They call in the police, and then the police will call children AIDS. Why we have to go through that? You know, I said this earlier that I really appreciate, you know, what's going on with the Windsor Police, you know, having a diversity department, you know, which is a step forward, you know, a step ahead of everyone. But look at you, Constable O'Neill. How long have you been constable? Okay? The young black guy in the community. I have so many resumes that want to come and become police officers, but are they going to stay constable for 20 years and until their retirement? They don't even have a chance to become the police officer they want to be. Some of them, they end up going to OPP. We need to do something about it. You know, and it goes from the black man and effectively the young black man and the woman. So this comes into our families, destroy our families. That's why we can't have a family. Because when a black man comes home and he cannot be the real provider for his family, the wife will start disrespecting him because he doesn't have his position anymore. Okay? And it goes on and on. So it's okay by the son or the young girl sitting, you know, watching his mom, her or his mom disrespecting her or his father because he cannot provide. But if you look it up, Is it because he cannot provide? No, it's because somewhere the system failed him. It's not his fault, and he still want to do it, given a chance. And now because the system failed him and put him in jail, he comes out of jail, it's even worse. What have we done wrong just for being Black?
Well, let me jump in here just for a second, because Claude, I want to flip that back and say, what have you done right? And I want to share a story, a little bit about you and our involvement together that led to a positive change. And you've certainly raised a lot of important issues. Some I'm not aware of. I mean, I'm not connected in any material way with the Children's Aid Society, so I'm not aware of this. But I find it really interesting to hear the comments and to try and understand what it is Black families were going through in this regard. But I want to go back to our interaction, and really one of the first times that Claude and I met was when I was running for mayor in 2014, and I was invited to meet with the African community of Windsor at their then center. And I took them up on that opportunity, and we went into the basement of a facility on Wyandotte Street, and there were a number of people there. And I think we had a real positive experience between, all of us had a real common understanding and a real good dialogue that day over the course of a couple of hours. And there were a lot of things shared at the time. And the one takeaway that I had from that meeting when there was representatives from all the different African communities in Windsor in that room, was the sense that there was an inequity in the hiring process at the city of Windsor. And there is no doubt, I can say this from the first day I got here, and it's certainly become more evident the further I've gone along in my time here, that the faces that I see amongst our 2,000 employees, those faces don't represent the broader faces I see in the community as a whole. And that was expressed to me in 2014 at this meeting. And so, in some ways there's an explanation, and the explanation is we're an employer of choice. And that 30 years ago, when a lot of the folks that you see at the city today were hired, the face of our community was frankly different. I remember the face of my high school from the 1990s was a lot different then than it is today. We've changed a lot in the last 20 years. Last 30 years, we've changed a lot. And so because we're of an employer of choice, people work here for an entire career. Once they get in, they seem to stay. But the beauty is we are now in a position, and Councillor Francis would know that, we are in a very difficult but unique position where we have about half of our staff, and we have 2,500 employees, about half are eligible to retire over the next 5 years, which means there is widespread change necessarily going to happen on the city front. You say, well, why is any of that important? What I did when we had our human resource planning meeting internally, and I looked at this, it says, oh my gosh, this is the perfect opportunity now to move forward with the conversation that we had in 2014, Claude and others, and say, how do we make sure that the system of hiring that we have here is going to be, not that it's unfair, but how do we remove any of the barriers, any of the things that exist that will limit our ability to make sure that we're hiring people that better reflect the community as a whole. And so I printed off, just an example, I printed off the application for a caseworker, one from the Government of Ontario website, one from the City of Toronto website, and one from the City of Windsor website. This is a position where every city has hundreds and hundreds of these types of workers, and one that seems always to be posted because there's some level of turnover. And when you looked at the Province of Ontario job description and the application process, they went to great lengths to explain the position. And then at the bottom, it says, here are the qualifications. And there was no education qualification. They listed probably a page of qualifications. And they just said, if you feel you have the background and experience that meets this position, here's how you apply. Then I took the City of Windsor, pardon me, the City of Toronto caseworker job description. And they went through, and at the bottom, under qualifications, it listed them all. And as far as academic and education qualifications, it was basically a bachelor's degree or a community college diploma in a relevant field. So they left it wide open to still be able to consider a whole host of experiences and educations, right? Then I looked at the City of Windsor job description. And when you looked at the qualifications, we had narrowed that down that you had to have one of 3 bachelor's degrees. I mean, there was no community college. It was only one of 3 bachelor's degrees, and it was materially different from what we had seen happening in other cities and at the provincial level. And so City Council, I brought together a group of folks. We prepared a program. We brought someone in to help us, frankly, the Diversity and Inclusion Initiative. We brought that to council. Council approved that initiative. John, I think you were part of that. You were here when we actually approved that. Now it's being implemented. And the goal here is to try and provide more equity in the system. And that was one area specifically where we recognized that we were putting in barriers that were limiting good people from being able to qualify for a job here at the City of Windsor. And that is but one of the elements of the Diversity Inclusion Initiative. The whole thing is on our website. If you go to citywindsor.ca and you just search diversity and inclusion, the program will come up. But we implemented that, and we're still executing it. It's going to take several years to roll out, and we're still moving through that. And so we've identified some things, and those conversations, Claude, notwithstanding everything you just said, there was a takeaway from that. There was a takeaway for me, and you're seeing action on that small, I think it's a small front because it's a small change, but I think it's going to have a material difference over time as we move through the next 5 years that will help not just the African community, but others who also feel that there's an inequity in our system. And I take what I think Irene said in her comments, that just the sense that it's not fair. I'm sorry, it was either Irene or Patricia, I'm sorry. That just the system is not fair, and if you don't feel, or if you feel that it's unfair and you're not connected to it, then somehow you disengage. Patricia, I think it was you, that you start to disengage because you just feel the inequity. And so we're trying to remove that. And I don't want any of you, this should not be, and I appreciate this conversation and all of you joining, I don't want this just to be a conversation that we can have when something bad happens somewhere else in the world that draws a spotlight and attention to things. I want to be able to have these conversations with you, with the people who are watching, with the other community groups. As you see something, as you have ideas, don't feel we have to wait for this time. Feed the ideas in, because things are always changing. We're always looking as an organization how to be better moving forward. And I think the mayor 100 years ago would have said that I want better things for my community. The mayor 100 years from now will say the same things, that we're not perfect and we want to keep improving, and how do we do it? And so we need to hear from you. And it can be just a short email. It doesn't have to be, a 2-hour phone call. This could be a short email saying, have you thought about this? Or I've looked at this city. I know my cousin lives in this city and they're doing this and it seems to be working. Just feed the hopper with little ideas that we can stew on a bit and try and figure out if they're appropriate, if they're right, if they're going to make a difference here. Because at the end of the day, whether it's Fred or Drew or John Elliott or whoever else is around the city council table, we all want to see this place that we live get better. And so don't be afraid to send in these comments and ideas that will help us work towards getting better together.
May I follow up on that? Because I actually have some ideas now. One thing that I would say is, in terms of the current state of the Windsor Police Service, it's certainly appreciated that there's a great human rights project that took place, and we're all looking forward to seeing the rest of those recommendations implemented. So that would be a great next step. I mean, in terms of the diversity of the Windsor Police Services, we all recognize that in a city with the demographic composition that we have here in Windsor, the diversity that we have, there's definitely a need for more diversity in our police service. It's really sad and regrettable that not since we had Alton Parker and Howard Watkins in the 60s have we had more than 2 detectives of African descent. It doesn't seem as though people are really moving up through the ranks. And it seems as though there may be fewer than 20 people out of 600 officers and staff. So these are things that need to be looked at, not just in terms of representation, but in terms of the education and the community relations that can result from that. When you have officers who actually look like the community and come from the communities that make up Windsor, the opportunities for better relationships and better understanding will definitely be increased. Right now, there are a lot of misunderstandings, and that is pretty evident. We all know that it's difficult to put yourself into the shoes of someone else if you haven't lived their experience. And it's difficult for officers to simply learn through brief trainings all that they need to know about diversity. So having a more diverse population would certainly help to build that kind of understanding and better relations with the community. But I would also say that one of the things that really keeps people out of policing is the system of background checks. We know that a lot of young people of African descent who would make great police officers are basically disqualified and cast aside because of the number of times they've been stopped by police. Every time that happens, they go into the database, whether they've done something wrong or not. So we have to look at these systems, these underlying barriers that are keeping great candidates out of policing, and really be aware of them and make some very deliberate decisions about how to deal with those barriers.
Could I jump in?
Thank you, Irene. Just being conscious of time as well, we're at about 10 after 3. So I would like to ask if there's anything that one of the panelists would like to discuss, a direction you'd like to see the conversation go in at this time.
Actually, before we go on, could I mention something? In response to Claude and also Irene, but me personally, I've never applied to get to be a sergeant, but also too, there's quite a few other Black officers who haven't applied or tried to be anything more than a constable. So moving forward, it's something that we as Windsor Police have to try to see now. Why is that? We have seen before why we aren't getting people of color coming into Windsor Police, and we try to fix that. It's getting better. But from within now, we have to try and look and see, well, why aren't our Black officers who are here, why aren't they trying to move up into the system? And that's something that we have to work on from within. Yeah, you're right, we haven't had more than 2. We have 2 officers right now who are above the rank of constable. But we do really have to try and see and try to figure and encourage and empower our Black officers to try to look to move up into higher classes within Windsor Police. Like I said, something we have to take seriously and talk about and see what we can do about that part of it.
And if I can just...
So if I may add to this, I would like also to, bring a little bit light on things that are happening with the colleges and university in Windsor, when the small group of our children that insist and finish their education don't get any help to find internship so that they can be qualified for the job that they got trained for. Okay, so I think that is just something that we need to also think about. We don't have that kind of connection. You guys have that kind of connection, so the school has to do something, because I don't want my son to finish his education with a bachelor degree and sit home or have to get a job from a factory just because he doesn't have the that experience that is required to get the position.
Thank you. We'll go to Chief Mizuno.
I'm done.
Sorry about that. I just wanted to add to what Neil said, and we do recognize that diversity is very important, and we do need to reflect our community. And Neil, you're absolutely right when it comes to promotion. It's easy to say, well, our Black officers, they didn't want to be anything more than a constable, and we do need to look at that. Well, why? What is it? Is there something in our systems that's, preventing people from applying for that promotion? Or, are you feeling a certain way that even if you did apply, you're not going to be successful? So, Neil, absolutely right on with that comment. And that is something that we do need to work on as far as promotion within the service. And again, recruiting diversity. And it is a huge challenge to recruit diversity. And Irene, I appreciate that comment about, is it that the number of times that you're stopped by police, does it affect your chances of being successful if you do apply, to be a police officer? And, that's one effect that being stopped numerous times can have, and then it affects the diversity that we can get to our service. So definitely great point, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Can I just say something as well, Chris? Thank you. This is a great panel, great discussion. Again, we do thank the organizers for this. I think it's very hard to unearth all of the problems of the day in such a short span of time in a Zoom meeting. I think steps going forward would be for the City of Windsor to develop some sort of a diversity panel with champions from our city, from different cultural groups, Black groups, Black representatives, Caribbean, African, all throughout. I think that would be something for the city to look forward to doing, so that issues can be addressed in a more systemic way, and proper changes can be brought about with that. The same should be said for the police services. The same should be done for the education system. I think if you have people at the table that you're making decisions about at that table, we'll see less issues. Children's Aid has moved towards that system a few years ago with the development of the BACC, and we are slowly seeing some changes. That needs to happen with the Windsor Police Service, because sitting here having this discussion, how much can we really accomplish? The same can be said for the City of Windsor. I recently got married. I walked into City Hall and I didn't see anyone that looked like me. It was just a sea of, well, you've already addressed that, Mayor. So we need to see us everywhere we go. And I think that will help with a lot of the mistrust issues that are in the Black community. If I'm correct, Windsor's the 4th most diverse city in Canada. Is that correct? But at the leadership level, we don't see that at all. I don't think we have, we don't see that. We need to see that. Everywhere we go, we need to see that. People are coming here for a reason. We need to reflect our community in the police services, at a city level, certainly in education, and on and on. Thank you.
Well, I just want to interrupt real quickly and say, and Drew, Mayor Dilkens, Drew, I know you pointed this out before, was the fire department. That's one of the things where I think I'd like to still be in council. One of the few things where I'd like to still be there, because I know Windsor, the fire department, it's easy to pick on the police, but as Neil said, we are moving in the right direction. Slowly, but we are moving slowly in the right direction. But the Windsor Fire Department, yeah, that's one of those, and I mean, that's a good career. But the amount of Blacks that are in the Windsor Fire Department, you could probably count on one hand. I don't know why that is. You know, like I said, I'm not on council, but if I was, that was one of those doors that are like, yeah, I need to probably try and kick that door in a little bit, because there's something going on there. But that's one of those professions in the city, and it's a great job. It's a great career, but the amount of Black representation they have in the fire department is probably like one hand, if that. So, you know, just food for thought in terms of when we're talking about, you know, professions in the city. You know, my hat goes off to the police at this point, and there's still a lot of work to do. I agree with a lot that's been said by the panel, but when I look at Neil and Chief Mizuno that come from, because I know the chief herself had to come through a whole, you know, being a different culture, you've had to come through a whole road yourself. But I can honestly say that the work that we've been able to do and how I see the place now is in a good direction. Not as fast as I like to see it, but at least we're going in the right direction. But on the other hand, and I don't want to keep repeating myself, that fire department, there's something in there. I don't even think they have any Black women on the fire department. I had a cousin that has been applying and applying and applying. It's like a merry-go-round of excuses why she can't get hired. So I'll throw that out to Councilor Francis and the mayor for some thought there, but I just wanted to say that.
You know what, John, you raise a real interesting point. Let me share with you one of the things that we've identified, because I have gone to these graduation ceremonies and seen a group of, you know, multiple years in a row, a group of 12 white men staring back at me when I'm at the microphone making remarks. And it's very, very obvious to me. And one of the barriers that we've put in place, I think it was, you know, I have to believe it was unintentional by past councils, but I can see the effects of the decision. And so from a city perspective, as we look at what we deliver, the cost of how we deliver it, how to, you know, how the revenue and expense sheets and the P&Ls line up, when you look at the fire department, what happened many years ago is that we said there is a cost to going through the recruiting process. I feel like saying it's maybe $200 or $250. And that's the cost of testing and going through the physical and all the things that you would have to do. And what we did is we flipped it, saying there were so many applicants that we have an opportunity to really put the cost back on the applicant. So if you want to apply, here's what it's going to cost you to apply, and then we run all of the tests. And I think what that has done for some is actually created a barrier just at the beginning where people will not apply because they can't afford it. And so we may be leaving people on the road because they can't afford the initial fee to make applications simply to apply to the fire department. And it's dissimilar to police because police has a province-wide standard where you have to go through all these services agree to the same standard, and you have people apply to multiple services. But it's one of the barriers, John, that I think we've identified because we've noticed that there is obviously a lack of diversity, but also a lack of women applying for the job. We just can't even, like, if you look at the resumes, we can't even get them to apply. And so that obviously is a sign that we need to do better, that we've missed something somewhere when all we can get are white men to apply for a program that are, I think if you look at who's going through, for instance, the St. Clair College Fire Training Program, that is not representative of the faces or the sexes that are going through that program in any given year.
I think we have to look beyond things like what's the barrier to people applying in terms of cost of application and so on, and look at the actual cultures of these organizations and whether those workplace cultures dissuade good candidates from wanting to be involved in them. If you are looking at a homogeneous all-white man department, for example, what are the chances that you're going to feel comfortable there? So I think there have to be some more specific and deliberate overtures beyond just reducing the cost of applying, and actually looking at that workplace culture and making sure that it will be an environment that will foster diversity and equity for the people once they actually get in the door. And that is true across all levels of the city. I mean, the other thing I would just say is building better relationships with minority communities, and specifically the African descended community. That needs to be a big priority. If we're concerned that people aren't getting opportunities to even feel comfortable in those spaces, maybe we need to look at some more strategic measures like introducing some mentoring programs and some opportunities for people to be in those environments and kind of check it out and make sure that they will feel comfortable there. This is definitely not a time to refer something to another committee. I believe the city has had a diversity committee in place for some years now, and I'm not sure that that committee, despite best efforts, is necessarily talking to the communities of African descent to the extent that perhaps they need to at this moment in our history. So I'm hoping that we'll see some real strategic changes and a real sense of dedication and commitment to overcoming these barriers.
Thank you, Irene. We're going to do a quick sort of round robin as we near 3:30, our wrap-up time. Just going from my screen, Patricia, do you have any final comments you would like to make for today?
Sure, thank you. Again, I want to thank the mayor and the city of Windsor for having this opportunity and creating this forum, Windsor Police for coming to the table and having these frank discussions. These conversations are never easy to have. I want to thank all of the panelists that have come forward today to share their experiences. We are speaking from our hearts. We're talking about a place of hurt that I'm a very private person and I don't like to discuss, you know, racism, because, you know, the minute you start talking about racism and racial discrimination, somebody has the audacity to say, oh, she's playing the race card, or they're playing the race card. I've worked extremely hard to move and have the things that I have, my own practice, my own business, and have the things that I have for my family. And when I see something that's wrong, you are quieted, you are silenced, because if you say something, somebody could perceive it as you being an angry woman or a frustrated person, or, you know, you're playing the race card. This has nothing to do with that. The reason why I agreed to participate is because I feel like being silent is improper. Not anymore. Not anymore will it be okay for people to engage in this fleeting conversation about, okay, well, and just being very dismissive. We have a serious problem. And even though people don't see it and it's not overt, we don't have people with Ku Klux Klan hoods marching down the street, you know, or people, George, the unfortunate incident with Mr. Floyd didn't happen in Canada. It does not mean that anti-Black racism and systemic racism does not exist right here in our beautiful city of Windsor and right here in our own country. And what we have to do, each and every one of us, and especially our individuals who are white and are not Black, if you truly believe that Black lives matter, take an introspective look at your life, at your circumstances. How have you perceived Black people? What can you do moving forward to address this situation and make everyone feel that they belong in this community? I can give examples of walking through a particular store, minding my own business, and I have a very expensive handbag on, and I'm walking through the store and I'm followed through the store. I'm followed through a pharmaceutical store into an aisle just to purchase Tylenol, and this person is literally right behind me watching every move I make. This is happening right here in our city. And so we need to be alive to these issues. And I appreciate that, you know, this is something that the city of Windsor may not be able to address in each and every aspect of inherent bias, microaggression, or racial discrimination. But I think acknowledging that the problem exists here and coming together is a huge component in moving forward. My recommendation is, if your worship would hear me, is that the city of Windsor create a forum to allow this dialogue to continue, and that we are allowed to provide and work together to formulate some type of mechanism where we can address levels of systemic racism in our city. And by doing that, we can put together either a memorandum or what we expect or what we're asking for. And hopefully we can come together and see that we can make some significant changes. I also agree that there are other community partners that should be at the table. And I know this was kind of just put together, but I think we need to hear from educators and from Children's Aid, and we need to definitely come together to make this community a better place. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. One thing, and I'm going to take some responsibility for this, folks. I set this to go from 2 until 3:30. I am conscious of the fact that I do need to free Mayor Dilkens up for a meeting. So Mayor Dilkens, if you would like to go next, and then I will remain with the group so that everyone has a chance to share their final thoughts.
Well, thank you very much, Christopher. And sorry I have to leave for a 3:30 meeting here, folks. But I want to thank all of the panelists. I want to thank the chief and everyone who logged in to observe from home. It was really a chance for myself as mayor and for Chief Mizuno as chief of the Windsor Police Service to hear and listen to important issues and try and understand what role we can play as municipal leaders to drive out racism from society here in our community. And as I said at the outset, it's important to talk with people who can see and help us see the world a little bit differently. And so for me, and I hope for everyone joining us, that this was an opportunity to talk about how Windsor can be most inclusive, respectful, loving, and a connected community. We really do live in one of the most diverse communities in all of Canada, and so much good can come from recognizing and embracing that. And I saw a recent post on social media that said, your Black friends are emotionally drained. So please reach out, start a dialogue, be open to where it leads. You know, such conversations can be challenging and can be uncomfortable for everyone, but they are also critical if we want to see change. So every step we take together is significant. I appreciate each and every one of you being here today. Thank you for joining, and I look forward to future conversations as we move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Dilkens. Joy?
Thank you. I'll just leave with a couple of comments that I've been thinking of, and the comments that we've heard so far have been amazing. We've hit a lot of great points, but in actuality, the blanket has been pulled off. I mean, we're actually getting a glimpse of what can happen here if we don't address our own systemic racial issues. And we know that it's different here in Canada, but understand that it's the same monster, but a different can of paint. How we address this must be unique to Canada. People need to be able to trust our leadership. Words mean nothing without trust. And the acknowledgement here today is the beginning of that. And I appreciate being a part of this panel, and I look forward to working with some of the youth, actually. I've spoken with a lot of them that have participated in the marches or organized the marches. And I think they should be included in some of these panels and some of the conversations. And I'd like to facilitate that if possible and bring some of our leadership on with them, because they have a lot to say. I mean, just some of their comments and their questions are very relevant. I mean, we're all the older group now, so to speak, you know, but we need their opinion. You know, they are the future, so we need their opinions on what's happening here. And just them stepping up over the last 2 weeks has been incredible. And I think they need to be at the table also. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Joy. Moya, we'll go over to you.
Thank you, Christopher. I just want to kind of end off by saying that seeing race isn't racism, and it's really about how you prejudge someone by, you know, just looking at them. And I think where we need to teach and really bring the awareness to that prejudice is through education. And I think we need to make sure that there are representatives at the table in discussions when it comes to education. We need to make sure that everybody is at that table and talking about it, because I just don't think, I think that's the only way that we can really be able to understand and have other cultures understand what is going on in our education system, and make sure that, you know, that we can stop this from happening for the future. It's crazy to me to think that, you know, there are some days where I've been told that that I'm only in the position I am because I'm Black, because I am that token Black person in the office. I've worked very hard and I've gotten the education and the background to do what I do. And I think that if we can just get rid of these judgments that are put upon us, I think things would be so much better and we can move forward from that. So yes, I think more discussions like this definitely need to have at so many different levels, and we just need to make sure that there are so many more people at this table to have these discussions in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Moya. Cloud, over to you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. And I agree with Joy and Moya 100%. I believe that we need to have more of this, and we need it to be inclusive of, you know, you name it, Bangladesh, Chinese, and indigenous, you know, and put something together. I believe that we can put a proposal together and let Fred lead this thing, you know, and submit it to the city. We need to be the change that we want to see in the city. So we have to put it together and hope for the best. I think this is a good step moving forward. And thank you, Mayor Drew Dilkens. Also, I want to say thank you to Chief Muzzino. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong, but you're doing a great job, and you have good police officers. Not all police officers are bad, you know, and you're doing a great job in the city. We thank the mayor for trying. It's not enough, but we will support if he can support our actions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Councillor Francis?
Thank you, Christopher, and thank you to all the panelists. I mean, I've enjoyed this. I kind of wish it could go on for several more hours, but from what I'm hearing, perhaps this is a part one of a multi-session discussion that I think everyone agrees needs to happen. Thank you, Chief Mizuno. Thank you, Neil Mckechrin. Thank you, my good friend, John Elliott. It's always good to see you, my friend. What I take away from this and what I've heard, and I really wanted to listen, even though I work at the Multicultural Council and we do these sessions of to fight racism, fight discrimination, and we hear many stories. The stories I heard today were sad and they made me mad. They did. They made me angry, and I thank you all for sharing it, because as Patricia said, yeah, it's not easy to share personal stories, but it really is powerful because it allows someone like me to say, I've never experienced that, but the fact that someone else in my city does really angers me, and we need to change that. And what I heard from Irene, and what I heard from Joy, and what I heard from Michael and Moya and everyone else was, there's barriers in our city. There's a lot of barriers for a lot of people in our city. And as not only someone that works at the Multicultural Council, but as an elected official, I want to do what I can do to remove those barriers. Barriers from success, barriers from achievement, barriers from jobs. Anything I can do, I'm more than happy to do it. And you have a partner in me. And I'll close by saying thank you all. And we did see, we heard throughout the discussion, be the change, and more representation, and my diverse representation. I'll just remind everyone, again, there's a municipal election in 2 years from now, and I hope that we have a candidate group of vast diversity that truly reflects the community in which we live. And hopefully one day we have a city council that really, really reflects the community in which we live. I can tell you on behalf of all the members of council, we all want to make our community a better place. The rest of council would be on this discussion right now, but we'd have to make it probably an 8-hour discussion if that was the case. But I can share with you that their commitment is just as strong as mine and just as strong as the mayor's in doing whatever we can do to remove all barriers for Black people, for all people. But we hear you. We know that Black Lives Matter, and we know that anti-Black racism exists. And I can tell you, we are all committed to doing what we can to not only improve the situation, but make it significantly better, where hopefully 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, we could look back and say, you know what, this is where it started. And I'm really hopeful it continues, and I certainly will do everything I can do to make sure it does. So thank you again, everyone. I really appreciate being part of this.
Thank you very much. Irene?
Well, thank you so much again to the organizers of this discussion. I do believe that good discussions are the basis for good decisions, and I hope that these discussions will continue, but not endlessly and without termination. Many of us who are on this panel have been consulted many times before about these same issues. And the changes that were identified 10 years ago, 20 years ago, or whenever have not been realized, have not been resolved. So we do need to be able to move forward from discussion to action very soon. And we do need a greater diversity of voices. This was a great diverse panel. But we recognize, all of us from the communities of African, Caribbean, and Black Canadian descent, we realize that African descended people in this city come from many countries and many cultures. I'm not sure that the individuals at the city or in the police service necessarily perceive that about us. They may perceive us as simply Black people. They may not realize that someone who's from a country such as Somalia or Sudan may have different responses to law enforcement than someone who grew up here and is an Underground Railroad descendant. They may not realize that there are different fears and concerns, and that we can actually escalate situations if we don't understand the people we're dealing with. So we need to, again, make sure that there is better education for police, better diversity, removing the barriers that make that positive recruitment possible. And I'm really hoping to see positive changes this time. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Irene. Chief Mizuno?
Thank you. You know, first, I just want to say thank you to everyone for sharing your stories. Hearing your stories is so important. And really, it's, you know, sometimes it's just hard to believe that there's still stories like that out there. And it is, as Councillor Francis said, it does. It makes you angry and it makes you mad. And it's, you know, it's too bad that other people are experiencing this. We need to do something. And whatever the Windsor Police Service can do to, you know, help make our city, you know, the best place to live, the most safe place to live, and an inclusive place to live, we'll work together with everybody. I appreciate that I was able to be a part of this discussion today, and we are committed to continuing discussions moving forward to see how we can make changes with our police service so we don't have these types of stories anymore moving forward. So thank you to everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Michael, over to you.
Once again, thank you to all of the organizers of this discussion today. I believe it was fruitful, but beyond it being fruitful, we do want to see action. We do want to have more than just constant conversations, as Irene just mentioned. We've been doing this for a long time. I'm only 35 years old, but we've been doing this for a long time. And so we want to see some action. And I encourage, we thank the police services and of course the City of Windsor, but I also encourage those that are viewing this conversation for them also to be the change that they want to see. It starts at home and what we say to our kids at home. That fear of what you don't know, parents have to be responsible for what they're saying to their children and putting those little things in the back of their minds. And then it grows up into this big tree called racism. And so we need to be mindful of what we're saying at home to all those that are viewing this conversation. And I leave you with the simple words that Jesus gave to his disciples: treat others the way you want to be treated. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. John.
Yeah, certainly informative discussion. The experiences listening to some of the younger panelists. I say young because I'm an old guy, or I'm a wannabe old guy, but you know, the experiences that you were able to share, and I know that's got to be tough too, right? I'm hopeful that this discussion will continue, and like a lot have said, that we get some more people to the panel that I think would be real well as far as contributing to what we're talking about here. I'm like a solutions kind of guy. You know, I can sit around and discuss something, but at the end of it, okay, what are we going to do to solve some things? You know, I offer my own self as a resource person. I don't know that I'll put it out there, I don't know that I'll have the time to continue some of these, but I will surely direct young people that I know, and I say young, like the 20 on up kind of group, towards this sort of thing. One of the things, before I forget, it sort of eluded me, but our whole, and a couple of them touched base on it, was our whole education system. And you know, being in Windsor all my life, through the Sandwich Teen Action Group, I have had internship students do volunteer placement from the Faculty of Education. Some of the diverse students coming over and sharing a lot of their experience. But then when I look around in the city, and you know, it's just baffling. And I'll say exactly what I say about the fire department. It's baffling that we do not have more teachers of color in our school system. And you know, when you talk about the systemic barriers, right there, no excuse. And these kids, these young people, there goes my age again, but as they were doing their schooling at the Faculty of Education, and the kinds of stories that they shared with me that was going on in the University of Windsor in terms of racism, right? And so now they graduate and they're trying to find jobs in the city. Some of them are from, some of them are not, but they're qualified as teachers, but aren't able to get those jobs. So, you know what, I just wanted to point that out because I know that's another pink elephant in this room. And those are the kinds of things that, as this moves forward, you know, as far as solutions, because for Chief Mizuno and Neil, I was privy to that Human Resource Charter document, a program that they talked about back in 2012 with, at the time, Chief Gary Smith. And now we actually see the fruits of that document, right? Not a whole big tree full of them abundantly, but there are fruits. So this is, you know, this is kind of like the beginning of what I hope will continue. Like I said, I offer myself as a resource person. We have a big facility here for when the time comes that people can actually, I hope the time comes when we can actually meet together in the same room. But I'd love to donate our space here for meetings at free of charge. Remember I said that, to continue these conversations, get more of the people around the table, you know, and start putting some things into action. So 5 years down the road, a committee or a group of people like this, you can start see the fruits of what we're talking about today. So, I thank everyone that's part of the panel. Some of you I know, some of you I don't. Michael, like for instance, I know Michael, but I don't, right? So I appreciate you all coming on. Patricia, I know your name. I've seen your name, but I don't know you. Young Miss Moya, right? So you have to excuse me there, but I appreciate you all. Of course, Irene, cuz I know you. Thank you for coming on, Dana. I'm just now meeting you. Unfortunately, I'm not in council. Sometimes I like to be, other times, no, I don't want to be. Let me throw that out. But thank everyone that's texting in. I'm reading some of the comments coming in, and like others said, there are more people in the community that would be great to sit around and add to this panel and discussion. So, we can get to a place in Windsor. I'd be remiss, Neil Mckechrin, you're our guy. You're my guy. We're friends. I appreciate everything that you're doing out there in terms of outreach for the diversity. Like I said, we probably have about, off the top of my head, there's probably about 4 or 5 of our kids out of the community that are now on with Windsor Police. And that's change. That's where the change is going to come to, from within. But I don't want to be satisfied at that. And I want to keep pushing the envelope too. So thank you again to everyone. And please, if I can be of any help with anything, I don't know what it is, but feel free to email me, and I'll certainly be there. My main man, Freddie Francis, yeah, you're still my main man, but you owe me a coffee at my place. Got to get him to come to the West End. I don't know if he's worried about coming down here, but it's just a joke. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, John. Constable Mckechrin.
Thanks everyone for being on this panel. It's kind of short notice, but thanks for showing up. And actually, thanks to Dana. You did a lot of work over the last few days, so thank you so much. All I want to say is that being a Windsor police officer, it's hurtful when I hear negative reactions, anything happening with Windsor Police that's negative with our community. You keep trying to make things better, and hopefully it is getting better. But whenever we hear these negative interactions, it's hurtful. But it's good to hear. We have to hear this, because for us to get better, we have to know what's going on with people in the streets. We have to know what's going on all around, right? So we can't keep thinking, oh yeah, we're doing a great job, we're a great department. And I think we are. But hearing all these stories makes us think, yeah, for sure, we have a lot more work to get done. And we'll keep on pushing hard, we'll keep on doing better, right? Because I'm totally, I love this department. It's been great to me, my entire career here. But I want to see other people enjoy it the way I do, okay? So again, thank you all for coming out. And I do hope that we continue these discussions. Either smaller groups, big groups, I don't care, but we must continue these discussions, because it's the only way we can make that change, is hearing what our community is saying, what they're experiencing. We don't hear it enough, but this is a great start. And thank you all for being frank and being honest and being open, okay? And from here, have a great week.
Thank you. I wanted to avoid being the last person to speak, but I don't know how not to be. So what I just want to say is that when the mayor was speaking with Dana and I about this, we knew that the timing needed to be now for this conversation. We knew that it would take us, months longer to try to figure out every single person who could or should be at the table. And so I really want to thank Moya, just because Moya had to come to City Hall to pick something up outside in a safe, socially distant way from me a couple of weeks ago. And I found myself, I've had to have, 50 coming out conversations with people throughout my life. I'm a husband, I'm a father, and those conversations were difficult. But going downstairs, trying to figure out what I would ask Moya, what I would say to Moya in light of everything that's happening, had me terrified and just nervous. And it was a fantastic conversation. It was open and honest and eye-opening. And really, for me, set the tone for what today could look like. So I appreciate that we, did not get to everything. There were 25 questions in front of me that I would have posed. But the goal was to hear stories and to start there and see where we can go from there. So on behalf of Mayor Dilkens, I've written some stuff down that you shared since he left the call so that we can pass that on behalf of the city. Thank you for stepping up and representing your organizations, but also representing yourselves so well and eloquently during this conversation. We really appreciate it. And hopefully this will not be the last one of these. Be well, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.